everybody. It's me, Jackie Clayton with Recruiting Daily, and William Maurer for Recruiting Live. Very excited to get started, but as a friendly reminder, everybody is muted, but we do want to hear your questions. Make sure just type them in the little question box over there. You can test it. Put a #1 so I know that you're watching and you know that you're there. You can ask your questions and we'll get William to answer those. You can also put them on Twitter. Put #RDaily, and we will make sure to get those questions answered. And without further ado, I guess we'll just jump right into it. Today we have William Maurer from General Motors, recruiter of the recruiting the finest from all over the world. He's the, is it global recruiting manager? Is that official?
Sourcing manager, actually.
Sorry.
We are the. You're good. You're good. Yeah, we're the headhunters. We're the passive candidate finders, the purple squirrel slayers, if you will.
Purple squirrel slayers. I'm gonna get
Slayers.
that.
Yeah, you need it. It's important. Yes, absolutely. Get that.
Well, it was funny. I talked to William. I had seen online. I'm always looking for just some more answers to questions that I might not think to ask. And me and William had a great conversation. And one of the things that I was wondering, because of course, you know, my recruiting background, I've recruited in a lot of different places, but him being responsible for global sourcing, I was like, how do you get people to go to General Motors? Because the thing that struck me as interesting was when we talked about the types of candidates that you are looking for are the same. You're competing with like the Silicon Valley, Google, those types of engineer types. So tell us a little bit more about that piece.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. One of the things that I guess challenges that we face, or things that we run up against routinely, is that really, if you look at General Motors, or let's just take a step back. Let's think about your first car, right? For me, my first car was a Plymouth Reliant. It was banana boat yellow. It had bench seats, and it went like It went 0 to 60 in like 4.5 minutes, right? So that's your original car, right? But if you look at a car today, there is so much technology involved, and like what a lot of people don't understand is that there are literally millions of lines of code in a vehicle today. And as we look at the future of mobility, we start talking about things like cars that drive themselves, autonomous vehicles, things like that. Technology really steps to the forefront, obviously. So you've got a company like General Motors that is traditionally known as like a manufacturing company that realistically is a technology company. And how do we spread that word? And how do we let people know that and get the type of talent that we need in order to be successful and drive the business forward?
So how do you do it?
Well, that's a great question. No, I mean, there's a number of ways, but probably the most key thing that we did recently, and I've talked about this a little bit before, was that about a year ago, we launched our in-sourced talent acquisition model. So prior to that, we were operating under an RPO model, where we had a third party really doing all of our recruiting and talent acquisition for us, and representing us out in the field, out in the market. And a strategic decision was made to bring that all in-house. We felt like there were a lot of advantages there, and we've really been able to, from there, build a platform, build a strategy, build identify some pain points. There's some things that we needed to address, and really make sure that we're headed the right direction as we look to bring the right talent into our organization.
Now, how did that work? How did that look? I mean, what was the #1 impact you think, or difference that it made when you went from the RPO level to bringing all of it in-house?
Yep. No, so when we looked at it, you know, there's a number of factors, but it's no secret in today's recruiting world that there's a couple of things that have stepped to the forefront. If you've been in the industry a while, you probably remember what it used to be like in the old days and what you used to focus on. It's a little bit different these days, and a couple of things that were at I guess top of mind as you go on this journey is one, candidate experience. I mean, that's a really big part of it. The second part of it was certainly the value proposition. How do we tell the GM story? And quite frankly, if I were to simplify it, what I would say is that instead of having a third party try to tell the GM story, right? Having people that were part of the company, invested in the company, and I think most importantly, had their own GM story became paramount, right? Because when we're talking to candidates, what they're walking into, the way that it feels, the culture, how it's going to be, those become things that are very, very important. And if you don't have your own story to tell, it can be a little bit difficult to sell that. So we were really, first thing we did was identified some of the challenges or hurdles that we had, and then realistically looking at how we were going to overcome those. It became apparent we had to have our own ambassadors, like right there, and we truly do think of ourselves as ambassadors for the company.
Didn't your CEO, like, it was a major overhaul, this whole, like, rebranding and letting people know, what's going on. That was like a major thing corporate-wide, not just on the recruiting level, but company-wide, what kind of company it is, right?
Yeah, no doubt. So no secret, one of the challenges we had, right, was some of our legacy. We had a very public bankruptcy back in 2008, 2009, when everything was falling apart.
I was going to say, did everybody have a major bankruptcy in 2008, 2000?
I'm pretty sure everyone did, but I don't know if many had as public as GMs, right? So we were in the news, in the paper, and thankfully the company's come an incredibly long way because of we have some incredible leadership right now. Our CEO, Mary Barra, is an incredible individual who really has reshaped and reformed, the vision and future direction of the company. And there's been some amazing things that are going on. And one of the things that's advantageous to us, little known secret, is that Mary actually has an HR background. So when we talk about talent acquisition, like how we're going to get there and what kind of things we need to do, it's incredible to have someone who gets it, so to speak, and has that type of insight, has that type of direction, and can really help us move the ball forward.
Now, someone asked, they said, is GM planning on getting into the autonomous vehicle space? That's what Rob Miner asked.
Without a doubt. In fact, not only are we planning on, we're already there. And so one of the questions I get most commonly is, when are we going to see autonomous vehicles, right? The answer to that, there's two answers to that. And so I can't give a specific date. But what I can tell you, what I can tell anyone, is that it's closer than you might think. We have a dedicated team that's really focused on, again, the development of this product and driving mobility forward. And I think actually our CEO, Mary, said it best when she said, if you look at recent years or the coming years, you're going to see more change in the automotive sector than you've seen in the previous 50 years, right? There's just a lot going on from a technology perspective. And so while I can't give a specific date, I can tell you it's a lot closer than you might think. And you're going to see these things surfacing. There's parts of the country that they've already surfaced. And it's really an exciting time. And we're really fired up about what it means for the future of our company.
Well, and if you need people for that, I heard Uber has some people looking for work.
Yeah, they seem to, yes.
Just
so
saying.
If anybody's listening, I get it. So feel free to reach out, any Uber individuals who are maybe a little disenfranchised. That's what we're here for.
Sorry. Well, I think you brought up another point, because one of the things we had talked about, I had lived in a city that was very difficult to recruit to, and I said, well, what is it like recruiting in Detroit? I recruited, I just know that there was a big difference when I was recruiting people to come to Miami versus then recruiting people to come to Portland. Like in Portland, people would ask one question, does it rain a lot? And I'd say, yeah, and they'd say no. So what has been the pushback you've gotten trying to recruit people to Detroit? And, what do you say to that?
Yeah, no, great question. So as I mentioned, one of the things we had to do, like coming in and insourcing this whole thing was, just really get a grasp or get a handle around what some of the primary obstacles we were going to run up against were. And Detroit is definitely one of them. Now, if you're a big Kid Rock fan, maybe you're an Eminem fan, I don't know, maybe Detroit seems cool to you. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know, maybe. But definitely, it's not just the fact that, obviously, northern state, Michigan's a beautiful state, by the way, but northern state, snow's not for everybody, right? Then you have
Kid Rock and Eminem. Just kidding.
Yeah. then you have the media portrayal of what Detroit is, and that's a little bit tougher. So what's kind of crazy about that is simultaneously, while GM was going through a very public bankruptcy, the city of Detroit was going through a very public bankruptcy, right? So there's a lot of, I guess, ideas or perceptions there about what it's like to live in Detroit. And so one of the things that's really helped us immensely is, and for the record, I should say, there's been an incredible revitalization in Detroit. Like, it's an amazing place. So before I came to GM, let's say this was 3 years ago, and you were to say, Will, I'm going to give you an awesome job opportunity, but you have to move to Detroit, Michigan. My answer probably would have been, you're crazy, I'm not doing it, there's no way, forget about it. But I've been educated since then. Like, the first thing we do is we work very, very closely with our employment branding team. And they have, well, first of all, they're incredible individuals, really talented, and they can capture a lot of content that really tells the true story of what's going on in Detroit today. Another thing that helps is that with the revitalization, we're not the only ones. Like, there's really prominent companies, whether it be Quicken Loans or Shinola or some of these other things, as well as grassroots organizations that have really embraced Detroit. And so there's been a lot of content and buzz and things created that help us, that we can share with potential candidates and say, hey, let's see what's going on down here, or come see what's going on in downtown Detroit, take it in, absorb it, be part of it. And then, finally, I think, again, part of the insourcing story was being able to tell your own GM story. And for me, I have my own, right? Because the guy that was never going to move to Detroit moved to Detroit, okay? And the guy that was like, there's no way, is here now. And I was very, very pleasantly surprised. And I think a lot of our folks have those types of stories and can share those with candidates, right? Whether they grew up here and have seen the revitalization, or they came here and were like, holy cow, I had a bunch of misconceptions about what it was like to live in Detroit. Now they have it, and it's been very, very beneficial for us.
I understand getting that story. You really have to get that story down. I know Susan Gimbala, I hope I don't hack your name, but she said the same thing. She works for Delaware North, and the global headquarters for them is in Buffalo. And I think they ask about the snow, not the rain. Does it snow there? A lot, yes. Well, that could be a challenge, but they were saying it's education on what the city has to offer is key.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I think, there is. There's a lot of that, and like I said, there's a lot of materials that have been created, and whether it be videos or testimonials or brochures that we can share and say, and realistically, if we get people here, just check it out as part of the interview process, um, they're pleasantly surprised by what they find. I can tell you that I am. I mean, there's incredible. We're going to have all of our major sports teams right there in the downtown area, right? Got incredible restaurants coming in, a lot of farm to table type restaurants, a lot of arts and history. Detroit has an incredible amount of history, and there's a lot of really cool things to be a part of if you're down here.
Well, I just think that's a major point. And Audra, I appreciate her for joining us, but she was saying she loves seeing sourcers and employment branding professionals working together as a team. And you kind of have to, right? I mean, how does that play into your job? Y'all work hand in hand? Is it someone on your team? But how do you work there, and how do you get those things going with your employment branding team?
No, that's a great question, and that's actually an area where I feel very, very fortunate, is that we have an incredible employment branding team. And not only that, but they're so willing and so eager to partner and participate in this whole process. We attend each other's staff meetings. We communicate on a consistent basis, and it really helps both sides. You know, for us, they're really helping spread that awareness. They're sending out the messages that we want to send. They're kind of warming people up before we reach out, right? They're doing amazing things. And for them, we're able to give them direction on really what the needs are of the business, right? What are the needs of the business? Where are our pain points? What kind of things do we want to emphasize? What kind of skill sets are we really focused on? And they take that information, which again I'm incredibly grateful for, they take that information directly from us and what we see in the field, and they use that as part of their foundation for formulating the content and the message and the mediums that they'll use to get that out there. So it's I'm very, very appreciative of them, and I think as you look at the bigger picture, you have to have that collaboration, and you have to have, you know, those folks all coming together.
What do you suggest if somebody, like, they don't have a specific employment branding team, or as a recruiter, they're the ones that are responsible for that piece?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would say that even in that scenario, collaboration is important. So what you can't do is operate in your own little silo, right? And what's happening in your own personal recruiting world. But collaborate and understand your market, understand your target demographic, understand everything at a broader scale, broader picture, and take that information, that feedback, and utilize it to really drive what kind of content that you want to spread out there. So one of the things that we talk about a lot, and we're not there yet, but we're trying to get there, is creating a company where it's not just the recruiter's job to bring in talent, right? Like, everyone in our organization should be a talent ambassador. Everyone in our organization should know how to sell or talk about the value propositions associated with GM. And so that's one of the things I think is really at the heart of it, is take a more holistic view and then use the various mediums at your disposal, whether it be LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever you use, to spread a message that aligns with some of the greater goals associated with your company.
Now, going back, Rob Miner, and I appreciate you for asking this question because it kind of was what I was saying, was what sourcing strategies are you employing to lure people or get people out of maybe the Silicon Valley, or people that are known for going into that autonomous vehicle space? How are you attracting them over to GM?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think, you know, obviously it starts with education, and we talked about that a little bit earlier, letting people know some of the really cool and influential things that we're doing here. So when you can talk to an engineer or a developer and talk about, so there are going to be cars that are on the road driving themselves, and this is a brand new era, a brand new initiative for the world, right? And you can be a part of that. You can be part of that foundation. You can build that. I don't know an engineer on the planet that doesn't get excited about innovation, right? And doing something new and doing something that's never been done before, right? So that's part of it. You know, getting them here. And there's no doubt when we look at who we're going to bring, one of the first places we look are for people that have some sort of ties to the Midwest, right? So they either grew up here, they went to school here, they have family here, whatever it may be, because they thought that to be in the tech sector, they had to move out to California, right? They picked up all their stuff, they went out to California, and now we're saying, hey, you don't have to be in California to be a part of a really innovative tech company. Look at what we're doing at GM, and your 1,100 square foot house is not going to cost $1.5 million. So if you look at, you know, we certainly talk about like, you know, come back, contribute to our local community, be part of the innovation, and then, you know, cost of living plays a part too. We definitely, there's no doubt, we talk about that when we're talking to candidates.
I know, I laugh because I live in Waco, Texas, and people don't know that SpaceX is out here. I can just imagine the conversation that they have, like, come be a rocket scientist. But, you know, consequently, most rocket scientists lives in Alabama, but that's a whole different day, a whole different conversation. But someone asked something kind of interesting, and real quick before we run out of time, load your questions here because we're going to answer them from the ones that you add here. And again, you can put them on Twitter with the hashtag #OurDaily, and we'll make sure that William answers those. But Larry wanted to know, thanks Larry for being here, do you get to work from home often, always, sometimes? How do you work?
I feel like Larry is fishing for something he can take back to his boss. No, the honest answer is I spend the bulk of my time at the office. There's no doubt. I need to be there for meetings, cultivating relationships with a lot of our partners, various parts of the organization. With that said, I feel very fortunate to have the opportunity to work from home when it makes sense, right? When I don't have meetings, I can do that, kind of lock myself away. Obviously, when the day ends, I'm right here. My family's right here. It's a very progressive, it maybe is a little bit of a departure from what traditionally GM might have been about, but yeah, I still get to do it, you know, at least once every couple of weeks, and I'm very appreciative of it. Obviously, I have a lovely wife and a 5-month-old son, and so being able to end my workday and be right there and not have to fight through Detroit traffic certainly is something I appreciate a lot.
Well, as someone who works from home from teenagers, I can tell you that changes. That changes.
Oh, the appreciation of it changes?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Good.
But I did want to ask a question. You brought up an important point about when we were talking about getting people to relocate and selling the company and what's going on in your company. I know recently a company that traditionally were going and selling the benefits, they were actually in Silicon Valley where they're based, but they actually started offering to candidates to pay for them to relocate back to where they want to go to stay with the company. Instead of telling them you have to come work in Silicon Valley or in San Francisco, they were getting them to work for their company by offering to relocate them to the Midwest. So they figured out that what they were doing to gain them wasn't working. Rob Miner kind of had a question along those lines, like, have you ever tried something in sourcing that you thought was going to work perfectly, but it didn't work quite as you planned? Like a lesson we can learn from something that maybe going through that process?
No, that's, let me think about that for a second, because off the top of my head, the answer to that is absolutely yes. I mean, there's things that don't go as we plan, like all the time, right? But I think a lot of times when I think about, and a lot of that has to do with us in tools and direction that we try to go down. And what I'll say about that is that there's some big players in our industry, right? There's tools that everybody relies on or has. There's some really big names out there, and one of the pitfalls you can fall into, and one of the things we ran into, is that yes, they have a track record of success in our industry, but if everyone is involved in the same platform and everybody's searching from the same talent pool, what you end up with is really lack of any type of competitive advantage. And so I think for us, kind of relying on those big tools that everybody else is using, and was maybe something that we take a look at, and instead trying to focus on maybe some more unique and innovative ways to reach.
You can say names, by the way.
What's that?
You can say names, by the way.
I know, but I'm being politically correct.
So LinkedIn Recruiter is not the best place for everyone to recruit. There are other sources that might work. Is that fair?
Right. No. Well, yeah. That's just one. That's just one thing where if you've got everyone on the same platform, you're obviously you're sacrificing any type of competitive advantage. So what we learned is that we had to invest a lot in the education and skill development of our talent acquisition people, so that we could be a little bit more innovative and creative, and even, I say innovative, but maybe even go backwards. And I don't mean backwards, but go to some traditional techniques that maybe in the wake of all this technological progress have been kind of forgotten. I'll give you an example. Is like picking up the phone and calling people, right? Like cold calling, good old-fashioned networking and refer. Like everybody has this reliance on technology. But that's one thing that we talk about a lot and have focused on, and have just learned that while we want to be part of that innovation and technical advancement, if we're doing what everybody else is doing, we're not separating ourselves. So
that makes sense. Well,
yep.
Larry had another question that he wanted to know, and just asking, like, how are you competing with Tesla? Like, how does that go? I know there's a lot of different things going on. So how does that work?
Yeah, so actually, you'd be surprised at actually how little we run into that. Now, Tesla is a very, very sexy name right now, but I think that one of the things that we are really able to focus on when we talk about talent is kind of the legacy and tradition and foundation of our company and where we're going, and that what we've done and where we're going is really, I mean, we're creating, selling, producing vehicles right now, and are profitable, very profitable. We've had incredible last couple of years, and the roadmap continues to be that, including our emphasis on autonomous vehicles. And so while I think from a if you really keep it grounded in actual productivity and where we've been and what we've been able to create, there's no what's the word I'm looking for? Guessing or hypotheticals in our world. We have tangible, real, we know how to do it type of things.
I'll that politically correct with this one. Yes.
Yeah. So, right. It's not we think we're gonna be able to sell cars, right? It's we can sell cars, right? So there's a big difference there, and I think a lot of people see that, and one of the things I've been really surprised about, and not surprised about, but pleasantly educated about, is that there is a lot of quote unquote Detroit pride. There's a lot of GM pride for people that grew up with the brand, grew up with vehicles. They have fond memories from driving in their grandparents, old 88 or whatever it may be, right? So we've got that going for us too, and so there's a lot of people that just want to be part of that, American legacy and what we mean to the overall economy.
And really quick, I have two short questions. One was, does GM have any significant plans to develop, manufacture, or sell fuel cell-driven vehicles, or is that a priority on the horizon? And that was from Lee from CES Consulting asked that question.
Yes, Lee, My apologies. I have to defer. That one might be a little bit over my head, so my apologies for that.
And
But
the last, oh, go ahead. I was just going to
so
say the last question that we have, it's from Rob Miner. And he's a car nerd. I'm kind of a car nerd. But he said he fell in love with the Corvette in 1968. He wanted to end today with you telling us the other logos on your shirt besides Chevy.
oh, good. So there's so many, right? So there's so many. And just to go over them briefly, we obviously know about Cadillac and Buick and GMC and here in North America and what those mean. But, you know, as we look at our international partners as well, you know, certainly names like Vauxhall that are really big and Opel, which has gone through some pretty significant changes here recently in different parts of the world. So one of the things that's kind of cool about it is, you know, I grew up knowing obviously those typical North American GM brands, and we all remember seeing the Camaro back in the day or the Corvette. My dad was a big Corvette guy, still is, and so there's a lot of warm, fuzzy memories for me in that and everything else. But we do have brands throughout the world. We're absolutely a global company, and you're going to see us focusing on some of those international brands going forward.
Well, I can tell you, I'm a proud GMC driver. My husband, probably the best advice, he said, if you're going to drive in the U.S., you need to get a GM car because we break down in any city, they have the part available somewhere. So,
Okay.
That being
That's
said,
awesome.
I appreciate you so much for being here. This has been really great. I hope you'll say you'll come back
No,
again.
thank you.
Thank you to Rob and to Susan and to everyone else who was here. Audra, I appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next week. Thanks
Thank
so
you
much.
so much, everybody.
Bye.